1894, Nicholas Alexandrovich Romanov ascended to the throne as the result of his father Alexander Tsar's death. Incompetent, he lived part of his life with his family in England, such as his cousin King George V.
Following the reforms of the Tsar Alexander III above industrialization, the working class was growing, and most of them were illiterate. However, the lack of rights and legal union perhaps helped to instruct their ideologies. Thus, some believed that intellectuals manipulated the masses, but even Lenin didn't believe to see revolutions in his lifetime.
On the other hand, even if the industrialization was growing, Russia's economy was basically agricultural. Most of the Russians lived on direct exploitation of the land. However, there was vast difference between the regions of the world, especially in Poland, because Russia's power wanted to punish them for their desire of independence.
One might argue that the Russo-Japanese War caused the revolutions of 1905. The Tsar Nicholas II believed a short war with Japan would increase nationalism. However, it was disastrous for Russia. He was humiliated by this tiny country. Her naval forces had been destroyed, while all the railroad systems, which had increased in the second half of the 19th century, was used for the transport of military goods, which kept the cities from receiving food. It created food shortages and inflation, thus famine spread throughout Russia.
In January 9, 1905, Father Gapan drew a petition and tried to explain the Tsar the circumstances in which they lived, because it was common belief that the Tsar was unaware of the hardship that they experienced. It is unknown if the royal family was in the Winter Palace that day. However, the soldiers started to shoot through the crowd. The number of deaths varies between less than 100 to thousands, according to which source is believed to be more accurate. What is sure is that this day began to be called Bloody Sunday, and that it destroyed every last support to the Tsar, and caused the Revolution of 1905.
The Revolution of 1905 was a series of strikes, peasant riots, terrorist actions, and etc. The most extreme revolt was a mass strike in St. Petersburg. The autocracy was faced with a challenge it barely survived. Two options were open to it: military repression or concession. For several reasons, such as fear of military rebellion, the advisors of the Tsar eliminated the first choice. Then, the October Manifesto, signed on October 17, 1905, or the 30th in the Gregorian calendar, created the Duma, a sort of parliament that didn't have any power over foreign policy, the budget, or government personnel, and would be dismembered by the Tsar multiple times to create a majority in his favor.
When in June 1914 the Archduke Francis Ferdinand was assassinated, Austria asked an ultimatum to Serbia, certain that they would refuse, and then declared war. Russia decided to protect this small country, the little brother, thus entering in war. World War I broke out when Germany, afraid of Russian mobilization, attacked Russia, whose ally, France, and also entered to war. Germany then invaded Belgium, without paying attention to Great Britain's warning, believing that they would not enter the war. The Tsar Nicholas II believed that he had no choice. However, he could have avoided the war, jointly with the other leader.
At first, Russia entered strongly in the war. The Duma declared full support for the war. However, they weren't prepared to fight against such power. To make things worse, they didn't have any good commanding system. Despite huge loss, they kept Germany from entering in Russian Poland until 1915. During 1915 alone, the Russians lost some 2 million men killed and wounded, and 1,300,000 prisoners, bringing the total losses since the outbreak of the war to 4,360,000. The Russian Tsar put all his attention on the war and showed little care for the people who believed that he was too unrelatable.
The leading political figures of the country met and repeatedly urged basic reform in the government, only to be snubbed by the Tsar. Alexandrina, Nicholas' wife, convinced, together with Rasputin, the Tsar to be commander-in-chief of the army. Rasputin, a rude but holy man, was protected by the Romanov because he was saving their first child. However, the nobility did not know about it, and started to lose confidence for the Tsar because of this man.
However, Tsar Nicholas II was not prepared to be commander-in-chief and could not speak to his army. Moreover, he could not even pretend that the Russian losses were not his fault anymore, because he was the commander-in-chief of the army. Moreover, people believed that bureaucrats were the enemies and were afraid of spies. Alexandrina, a German noble, was thought to be a German spy. When in February, people stopped the train where the Tsar was and forced him to abdicate the throne, and the throne was left vacant because no one wanted it. Thus, the revolutions were an accident.
A soldier in Irkutsk was asked to go to Petrograd to help put down the revolutions that were starting just after the New Year's Eve in 1917. When in March 15th the revolutionaries won, it was a day of celebration, with national hymns in the street and red soldiers. It shows how the Tsar was not liked by the people. Just after that, they received a telegram sent by Kerensky to relieve all political prisoners.
Even if some events were independent of the Tsar's will, Nicholas Alexandrovich Romanov could have saved the throne if it was his supreme objective. His basic fault was his stubbornness to keep autocracy in Russia and not listen to the crowd. All of his attempts to gain support failed because his reforms were too liberal for the conservatives, but not enough for the middle class. His belief to be in the throne because of the divine power led him to become commander-in-chief of his army and rule to run without any military experience. Thus, Russians' lives would be lost because of this.